From courtside of virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast, episode number 386. Andrew with you once again. I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. My co-host is Derek, but you know him in the forum as Deeper3, and he's also Deeper384 on Twitter.
No, happy to be here again. I have to ask you at the top of the show here, how does it feel to be playing Road Trip on NBA Jam on Fire Edition with somebody who lives on the other side of the world?
It's pretty surreal. And you could do it back in the day, but when it was when the servers were up, you were actually able to play multiplayer online Road Trip. I actually played with John Coleman, the former community manager for NBA Live and NBA Jam back in the day. We jumped on there and played some games together in Road Trip, which was really cool back then. Yeah, I mean, obviously, with the servers going down, you think, oh, that's something we'll never be able to do again. But yeah, we absolutely could.
Yeah, it's been wild, and it's obviously a new experience for me because I had more exposure before to NBA Jam 2010 as opposed to On Fire Edition, and On Fire Edition definitely has its benefits and its advantages over NBA Jam 2010. But how fun was it to use that Supersonics team? So for those who don't know, Andrew and I, we've been playing through the Road Trip mode, and once you complete a bunch of the challenges and beat a bunch of the teams, you get points and you can unlock teams and players and whatnot. So we unlocked the Seattle Supersonics with Gary Payton and Sean Kemp, and I locked on Payton. He was using Kemp, and we ran over the Kings. Had some awesome plays, alley-oops.
Top 10.
Great with Kemp's. Yeah, it's top 10 plays that made this week's top 10, which we just released. Give and goes, double alley-oops, all of that stuff. But how cool was it to use that Supersonics team together as well? I
mean, that's just a classic NBA Jam team, for sure. Kemp and Payton with the Sonics and just getting those double alley-oops, and just, we were trying to break the backboard. We didn't get there. You need to get, I believe, 30 dunks, and the 30th dunk has to come in the fourth quarter, towards the end of the fourth quarter as well. I know this because I played a game with the dunk champs, which we also used. We'll get to that in a moment. But I had about 80 alley-oops and dunks combined in that game. But because the 30th one came in the first half, it didn't break the backboard, and then it was way beyond the 30 in the fourth. So that's kind of a weird thing, but it does seem to be 30 combined dunks and alley-oops by the end of the fourth quarter, or towards the end of the fourth quarter. When you hit that 30 mark, that's when the backboard shatters. It seems to be fairly consistent that way in my experimentation with it. So we'll have to definitely try that. But the Supersonics team, a lot of fun to play. And how good is Road Trip? The way it's not just that classic campaign where it's just 2 versus 2 over and over again. Obviously it is to a certain extent, but it also changes it up with those different challenges, those different rules, those different conditions, and baskets counting for 4 and 3 or 1 and 2. But it really emphasizes the need to play with different teams and be strategic about the teams that you choose. Because, I mean, there are some teams that you could probably play with and win every challenge, especially the special ones, when you unlock them. But if you don't have enough shooting or enough dunking or blocking, then it's very hard to counter the strategy and fulfill the challenge and win under those win and rule conditions. It's really cool.
Yeah, so a couple things. We have to get the backboard broken so we can put that in the top 10.
Definitely.
It's added a whole new dimension to playing games with you and other people, to be completely honest with you, just the weekly top 10, because, you're looking for that highlight. Like, you're seeking out that highlight, something that would look great in the top 10 plays of the week. And like you had just mentioned, we were able to get a couple of our highlights from using that Sonics team into this week's top 10. And what's cool, too, about the top 10 is we released week 11 today, and you didn't know this because I haven't told you yet, but I've already received 2 submissions today for somebody from the NLSC, somebody from outside the NLSC. I've received 2 submissions for the next top 10, and Teddy Bear the Gamer has sent me like 20 different clips. So it's really cool how people are getting into it and they're looking forward to it every week. And nobody's complaining about placement or anything like that. It's really enjoyable. As far as the Dunk Champs thing, that was actually my fault. I chose Dwight Howard and Blake Griffin for that challenge. And the reason why we lost that game and why that team wasn't a good choice is because I thought choosing them made sense because putbacks were worth 4 points. And everything else was worth 2 or 1. And you would think, hey, Dwight Howard and Blake Griffin put back dunks, right? That's
Sure.
what you think. And it doesn't work that way because putbacks are incredibly rare. And it's hard to initiate a putback. Like, it's hard to shoot a shot and miss it and, to miss perfectly right and then somebody to, do a tip dunk. And like you said, that's a really good part of road trip because you have to think about the team you're using. Like, I remember you messaging me and saying we should use shooters for this challenge, for another challenge. And we put shooters on the floor and we won. And we've actually gotten a lot better as a team, I also feel.
I agree.
We play it. We're actually beating the gold challenges on the first or second try now, and we're cruising through the bronze and silver challenges. But yeah, no, road trip is definitely super fun. And like I said on the last podcast, I love the reward system and how it works. I love the unlocking players and team system. I love how fair it is. It's a very well-made video game.
It really is, and there is DLC, or there was, I think it is still available, that is an accelerator that unlocks a bunch of players and gives you some extra jam coins, I believe they're called, to unlock some other items as well, gives you a bit of a boost. But again, that was totally optional. You do level up pretty quickly. You're already at level 13. I think you started were you level 1 or 2 when we started? Have you been playing? Have you been playing without me, Derek?
No, I had actually not played without you. That's the thing. That's why this is really cool, because we started with me from scratch. So all of the stuff that you see, like my level, my bonus, all of that stuff is playing with you.
Awesome.
And I think that's also pretty cool. Yeah.
I mean, we've been playing a bit, but not looking at how much you've leveled up in this short time. It just goes to show how quickly through those early levels to get through level 10 and get some of the early super teams, your junk champs, your cover kings, the rainmakers, the fast breaks, and so forth. Those special teams, those all-star teams that have all the supersonics, of course, or even the EuroLeague teams if you want to use them. It doesn't take long to get those basic ones. Now, if you want to get the NBA Street characters, which include Stretch, you do need to get to level 30. So there are some big rewards for like level 20, 25, 30. But you get a lot of stuff fairly early on. And of course, you can unlock the individual players very quickly. We got Bird on the Celtics. And that's the funny thing, actually, because I thought, we should get the Rainmakers. But then with Bird and Allen on the Celtics, we've already got that duo anyway. So it's kind of, we don't necessarily need the Rainmakers.
We've used them a lot. And Larry is unbelievable in that game. Also, I just want to point out, Steve Nash's signature shot is the best I've ever seen in NBA Jam on Fire Edition. I just want to go back to saying that those signature shots are ridiculous. They're just amazing. You brought up Street, and I needed to bring something up with that as well real quick. One advantage I believe that Street Volume 2 has over NBA Jam on Fire Edition, one big advantage gameplay-wise, is when you're playing on Legendary mode. In what I would consider Legendary mode on NBA Street Volume 2 would be like playing gold challenges, really, right? Yep. Because it's the hardest level in Street Volume 2. You don't have the annoying, overpowering pushing that happens in NBA Jam on Fire Edition, where you can't even move. Like, you catch the ball and you get pushed, and then you try to get up and you get pushed, and there's too much of a delay, and you end up losing the ball. And sometimes it really can get frustrating in Jam on Fire Edition. And on Street Volume 2, the computer is incredibly challenging, especially if you're not using guys like Kobe and Shaq or like a really good team. If you're using like Terrell Brandon and Kevin Garnett, it's a war with the computer and you can lose a lot of games. But you don't have that same mechanic frustration and overpowering CPU frustration that you get with Jam on Fire Edition. Now, I'm all up for a challenge. Like, I love the challenge of stuff. How many times did I message you when we lost that double OT game? It was like, I can't believe we lost this. We got to do this
again. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, we got to do. Listen, I don't.
We can't finish a session like this. We can't.
We can't, exactly. And you're going to get used to that with me, because that's just the way I am. I hate ending on a bad note.
Oh, I do too.
But, yeah. You've even admitted it's cheesy, and
it is.
It's frustrating. Yeah.
It's only going to get worse from here, and I say worse. It's also fun, but it's also it does get worse in a way, because the real AI of NBA Jam on Fire Edition that I've talked about many times before, and one of the things that I think is one of the best aspects of its gameplay is that it does learn, and this was taken from the Fight Night series. In the Fight Night series, it was so that you couldn't just mash buttons and win boxing matches. Same principle here with the real AI in On Fire Edition, that it knows what you're doing. It gets an idea of what your strategy is. So you have to, so it knows to run here and push. So that's why sometimes you'll see me running to the corner and just like running backwards or just trying to do something different just to fool it, because it knows what I'm about to do. So it's already on hard, it's already on cheesy, and it already has been recording your gameplay, so it knows what you're going to do and has already got the counter strategies for it. So it is hard. When it wants to be hard, on Fire Edition is hard.
And it's not hard. The hard part that bothers me, it's the annoying part.
True.
So like,
Pushing.
but I will say this. It does feel damn good when we win, doesn't it?
Oh, it
when
does,
we
yeah.
win those goal challenges, when we overcome that, and they're wildly pushing us, and they're being cheesy, and you and I find a way to overcome that in a close game or make a buzzer shot or something like that. It is a great feeling. So I will say that, like, it absolutely is. But my opinion is, I think NBA Jam on Fire Edition is one of the best arcade basketball games ever made. And I wouldn't even argue with somebody if they said it was the best. But in my opinion, with the overall balance of gameplay and different things you can do, I give Street Volume 2 a slight edge. But I think they're both amazing games.
One thing that Street has is it allows goaltending, which I think is a good balance as well.
I love the that Shaq block.
Yeah.
The one that made the top 10, the number one play, where that was my brother. My brother is Big Ticket 0521, and he stands by the hoop with Shaq, and he was able to jump up and trap a three-pointer on the glass. How cool was that?
It looks great, yeah.
So it looks great, but yeah, and I definitely think that's an advantage. Although, I'm not going to lie, it makes me feel better about timing blocks on NBA Jam on Fire Edition. When they have those challenges where the computer is consistently laying it up because dunks 1 point. It feels good to be able to time those alley-oop layups and just those layups in general and be able to swat it out of the air legally. So it's pros and cons. But yeah, those blocks are pretty awesome in Street Volume 2.
Did you notice, speaking of the top 10, the line in Jam on Fire Edition from Tim Kitzrow saying, that's a top 10 play? Did you get that? Did you record that? Because that would be a great clip to use, I think, somewhere in the top 10, like as a voiceover at the start.
Yeah, I thought about it. No, my brother was watching us play, and he said, did they just say top 10? Because we've been just talking about the top 10 constantly when we play. We're like, is that a top 10 play? Is that a top 10 play? Yeah, no, that is a good line. I could probably find a way to put that in there, just the audio portion.
Yeah.
Maybe in the intro or something like that.
That's
that
what I was thinking,
cool.
yeah.
And watch it. It's been cool to record these games with everybody, to be honest with you. It's been really fun. Like with Stildo 33, that Bulls versus Blazers. How classic is that? Bulls versus Blazers?
Yeah.
On NBA.
even earlier than the actual Bulls versus Blazers, of course. To that end, we should probably mention that that's a little bit of a teaser of an upcoming mod release, that one.
The Bulls versus, yeah, exactly, 1988. So basically the incredibly talented roster making team of 2K19 are adding the 87-88 season as an option. And that's what we were playing. We were playing an early build of the 87-88 roster with me using the Blazers with Clyde Drexler and Kiki Vandeweghe, and who's very underrated, by the way, Terry Porter, etc. And he was using the Bulls with, Jordan and Pippen and whatnot. And it was a really good game. And how about the mods there, too, like the court and the Dornas and all of that stuff? It still blows my mind what we can do. I've been part of a pretty big part of the modding community and like the NLSC community since 2013, and it still blows me away when I see this stuff.
Oh, it's tremendous.
Like it's still,
yeah. I mean, I've been in the community since I found the site in and I say found, not founded, because I didn't found the site. I found it. It's, just to be confusing about that. Discovered, I should say, when I discovered the site in 1997, founded by Tim, Lutz, and Brian, of course. This is our 25th year, the NLSC, this August, as we're tipping off August now. And my 20th year, come August 26th, I believe is my anniversary, my 20th anniversary. But the kind of things that I've been able to be a part of, and that you've been able to be a part of, and that going back to the original NBA Live Street mod for NBA Live 2003, just tremendous.
Yeah, and I want to point something out, too. I would love to go back and see if I can find any posts. I don't even remember what my handle was, but I'm pretty sure that I had an NLSC account back in, like, the late 90s.
Oh,
like,
the old blue and black forums?
Yeah, I want to say I did.
Discus
because,
forums.
remember, I downloaded the modding tools for Live 98. and I modded Live 98 a bit. So portraits and I want to say courts and stuff like that. So I'd be very curious if I posted on the forum. I don't remember, to be completely honest.
I do have that forum backed up on my hard drive, those files. I don't have it up. It's not installed on the site, but I do have it backed up, archived. Would you have been D for 3? I could look it up. Just
No.
Would have been D for 3?
I would not have been D for 3. I don't know what I would have been for a username, to be honest with you. And I don't even know if I would have created an account. I might have, but I may have just gone and downloaded the tools. But it is wild that I was there. And, I used mods and all of that stuff and even modded myself a little bit back then. And then it took all the way up until 2013 for me to come back.
It's always cool when I hear people say that they said, oh, this site's still around and this is cool. And they, I was here back in the day, and they just kind of come back and we're still around. Because so many sites have come and gone, and big sites too, like a GameSpy who used to host us and were one of the worst hosts we ever had. Just putting it out there. I have a bit of.
You got hosted by GameSpy?
Yeah. When they were doing fan site hosting, yeah, absolutely. Have I not told you that story?
No. I feel like you've mentioned GameSpy before, but I didn't realize that they hosted the NLSC at any point.
So we were founded as the NBA Live Series Center, I believe. That name came in very early with Tim Lutz and Brian, and they got the NBA-live.com domain name. In fact, I remember when they actually became NBA-live.com, and it was really cool. But right about the time that I was in, that Tim had reached out to me, because at the time I was running the NBA Live domain on GeoCities. There's another flashback for you. But Tim reached out to me and said that would I be interested in taking over the site? He liked my work. He felt that I was the right person for the job. Hopefully, more people than not have agreed with that over the years. I'd certainly like to think that I've justified the selection, but in any case, so when I took over, we were also in the process of moving to GameSpy, because finding a host back then for free, you may pay for the domain name, but being able to get some free hosting was either a site like GeoCities, which had 15 megabytes of storage space, 15 megabytes, not gigabytes, 15 megabytes.
People don't get it. I used Fortune City,
Angel Fire, all of those.
Yeah, and the amount of space that we thought was a lot back then.
Oh yeah.
What we needed though, for what we needed, it wasn't bad. I mean, I even put Java. I remember making a site and putting a Java game in it and stuff like that, like coding a Java game. Just a simple one and whatnot, and it worked for that. But I even put background music on my site.
Oh yeah,
and all of that. Didn't we think that was cool? Yeah.
We did. MIDI on the background music of a site.
Yeah, it was MIDI. Oh my god, yeah.
But so we were moving to GameSpy. They were offering this hosting. It was a good deal for the site. It was free, and we've been very lucky to have some free hosts over the years up until we took on our own hosting costs in 2016. But, shout out to Turnkey. They've been great hosts with great technical support. I'm not being paid to say that, but that being said, if you'd like me to send you a referral, I will get some money off my bill, so that'd be nice. Anyway, Turnkey, I can't recommend them enough for their service as a paid service, but we've been very lucky to have some free hosts over the years. GameSpy did offer that, and at first it seemed great, but the first thing that they said is that they didn't want us to be NBA-live.com. We could still use that domain name, but it was under their Sport Planet branding and their Game Planet branding, and this was all the things they were doing for hosting the sites. And so so we were sportplanet.com/NBA Live. So that was hurting us already to not be our own .com. And they split what they call the dynamic server, which was all the PHP scripts with the forum and news posting, the content management system. That had to be on one server, while the other web server had all the just web pages, and we couldn't even host mods on there. We had to use their file planet as well. So there was all this stuff. It was just so much rigmarole, messing around, trying to get stuff done. To get the news posting to work on the main page, this is how ridiculous it was, I had to install the content management system that we were using at the time on the dynamic server and embed it on the main page as an iframe. And that just didn't look good. I made it work, but man. And then they had a big crash. And so we were down. We were down for about a month in about 2003 to 2004 sometime. And it was painful. And that hurt us as well, obviously. And fortunately, we moved on after that. But and I will give GameSpy this, is that I did contact them afterwards to get some stuff off the old server, and they did apologize and said, we always feel bad that we lost you after that big crash. And it's like, yeah, but you kind of screwed us around and made it so difficult to run the site in my early days, and I'm a teenager doing it, and I've got people...
Yeah, are they still around?
I'm getting to that.
Okay.
That's we'll get there, Derek. We'll get there. So it was so much messing around, and I'm dealing with, end of high school. I'm dealing with some people in the community that didn't like the job I was doing, were being very openly nasty to me about it, and talking about me on other, trash talking me on other sites, and saying nasty things to me in the forum. And if I hit back against them, I look like the bad guy. My early days running the NLSC were kind of rough. I will, and probably we'll talk about that more as we celebrate the 25th anniversary and my 20th anniversary this month. But long story short, GameSpy shut down around 2013. So I've always felt a little bit of schadenfreude about outlasting GameSpy, because they kind of made those early days so difficult. So, yeah, I've felt that kind of smugness that we outlasted them by almost 10 years now. So, yeah, I mean...
And we're still going strong, too.
Oh, yeah. And when I see a game, like I found... Which game was it the other day? I think it was And One Basketball on PlayStation 2. I've drafted a way back Wednesday on it, and I saw powered by GameSpy for the online component, which is no longer available, obviously. And I kind of, whenever I see that, I think, ha, yeah, and we outlasted you. So they kind of helped us, but they kind of screwed us over for a while there too, and made things difficult in the early days. So I do feel a bit of smugness when I see that when I think about outlasting GameSpy ourselves, and that's why it's cool, to be less smug about it. It is cool when people come back to the site after years and say, oh, I remember you guys, and it's really cool you're still around, and I feel good about that.
With all those early struggles, it's good that you kept your foot on the gas and just kept the NLSC going.
I almost quit. I know that 2004, right, there was a big uprising in the forum where somebody found a picture of me on another site, and whatever early social media it was, and I took my picture and put it over a face of a cop, and was like, this is Andrew, this is really him, and look at this ugly motherfucker and all this stuff, and he's an awful and all this stuff. I almost quit right then, because it was really pretty upsetting, and the issue, they hadn't come to me and talked about it. They just decided they were going to kick up a stink in the forum. So people who do that and who are that nasty to me, I'm not going to say that I've never done the right thing all the time, that I've not made mistakes, and that I've certainly tried to better myself over the years to that extent. But when people make it that personal and that nasty with me, them, quite frankly. And that's this is fulfilling the explicit tag on iTunes. So there you go, listeners of the NLSC podcast.
Yeah, I'm not used to you dropping the F-bombs, but hey,
not on air anyway.
Not on air anyway. No, I can tell you it still bothers you a little bit. But the good thing is that you didn't quit, and I think that shows them. And you know what? I think when they look back at stuff like that, and I think when people do stuff like that and then they look back on it, they feel pretty crappy about themselves a lot of the time.
Sometimes.
So I think they probably feel regrets. And if they don't, then they're just kind of crappy to begin with, and to end with. But anyway, yeah, you know what? I think that the best thing that could have happened is you basically just taking the reins and, making the NLS. I want to make a point about something. How good does it feel when you look and you see that there was a time where you had a really big spike on the site, and you saw and it was recently, and you see 1,000 members online.
Oh, it's
or
awesome.
something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
On the site, and most of it is for modding. Let's be honest. That's what most people go to the NLSC for. But the fact that you get that many people still going to the NLSC, which is about basketball gaming, etc., I mean, that's got to feel great. And I know it does.
It does. I mean, I obviously put a lot of work into the site to this day, both in maintenance, moderating, technical upkeep, my modding over the years, and certainly my content over the past decade or so, where I've really expanded into the writing, the articles, and the feature content, and the retrospectives, and the occasional video as well, and obviously the podcast. It does feel good. And I'm very grateful, as much as it may sound that I'm spiteful against some of the people who were nasty to me, and again, you are right, it does kind of bug me a little bit. Not to the point where it keeps me up at night, but certainly when I think back, I grit my teeth a little bit over those assorted jerks. But at the same time, a lot of people have been very supportive of the site, and people keep coming back and enjoying the content and being part of the modding community and everything else. I'd love to get that discussion back, as I've said before, with a lot of the gameplay discussion that we used to have, and devising sliders and talking about strategies, gameplay, that kind of stuff. Hopefully we can bring that back with 2K22. We can really focus on some content that talks about that kind of stuff. But No, I'm very grateful for the opportunities. It's allowed me to. Only time I've travelled internationally, Derek, is on EA Sports Dime as a result of running the NLSC, being part of those community events. So the opportunities have been tremendous. I'm not going anywhere. Sorry, haters, if that's how you still feel about me. Yeah, but it's been great, and obviously I've not done it alone as well. I've got you. I've had Ben, and Kenny, and X, and P Dub, and Joust Ming, and Leftos, and so many people over the years that have helped out. So I definitely have not done it alone either.
Yeah, no, I've taken a lot of joy in being part of it. To be completely honest with you, it's been a while now that I've actually been on this show, and we've talked about it recently. We're coming up on our 100th episode of the NLC Podcast recording together. That's not too far away at this point. And, doing the top 10 and everything. I'm just really happy to be part of the NLSC community, and, and I got a friend out of it. So that also works as well.
Same here, yeah. Right back at you, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I probably will tell some more stories. Maybe over this month I can drop a story or two in on the podcast because I've been around the community for all this time and been running the site for 20 years. So, I mean, it's not all bad stories. Some are funny. People who've flamed out of the forum in a funny way, things like that, or just some weird memes that have come along from our community. But no, I'd love to share some more stories as we celebrate our anniversary.
Yeah, I do want to point something out too about discussion. So back to basketball gaming and stuff and whatnot. I think one thing that really hurts it is the unbelievable explosion of social media. The unbelievable explosion of Facebook and Twitter and whatnot, and so many different avenues for people to make quick comments or hot takes and go right at developers, right? We've talked about that before, the developers taking breaks. Them, instead of going on the NLSC to type up feedback and whatnot and hope it gets past to the developers, or type up their frustrations in a better manner and more detailed manner, instead of going to the NLSC to do that, they're going on social media and going right at the NBA 2K main handle. They're going right at the developers and whatnot. And oftentimes it's things like, oh, your game is trash, fix your trash shooting, or fix blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it's not very productive. But I do think that that's really hurt the NLSC as far as content outside of modding.
Well, old school forums are now, like ours, are now competing with social media, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, obviously, is a big one. And, of course, as you say, the developers are on those platforms. So back in the day, maybe you had Tim had his contacts at EA, and then I did. So you kind of had those contacts, so you could be the go-between for the community. Now anybody can reach out to a Mike Wong. They can reach out to Beluba or Staff or anyone they want. It would be nice if they did it more constructively, obviously. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't have to go through. Not even an influencer, not even a big YouTuber. You don't have to go to them and say, hey, can you pass this along to the developers? Anybody can contact that developer directly, or try to, via social media. So it is definitely different in that respect.
Yeah, I think you're right, though. I think that we can try to make that a goal for NBA 2K22 again. We can't force anybody onto the threads, but hopefully if we put those threads out there and we put our detailed comments in there and detailed evaluations, really, of the game and whatnot, critiques and praise, maybe we can get more people onto them and talking about it. So I don't want
myself,
yeah. I want to point something out. If you guys haven't noticed, I've really been pushing Parsec. Not only have I been pushing Parsec, I've been pushing gameplay, like actual gameplay. That's what the top 10 is. It's gameplay. It's highlights. It's stuff that isn't talking about making mods, creating mods, all of that stuff. Sure, some of the highlights have some mods in them, but not all. And there's just a lot more to basketball video games that on PC and just the games in general than modifying them.
Absolutely.
And I just want people to pay more attention to some of that other stuff.
And I want to put this out, and this is something that John Ming and I have talked about before, the feeling that some people would rather mod a broken game than play a good one. That's a problem as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's people, and I'm not going to point out to any names, but there's people that are really good modders in the community. Some that I've talked to at length as well, and they've admitted to me that they don't play the games. If they ever play the game, it's to put it on to see how a mod looks in it.
Yeah.
That is it. Not really playing the game. And there's a lot of people that are actually in the community that are like that. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm doing this Parsec thing too, and why I'm pushing it so hard, is it's to say, hey guys, let's play these games and create memories. Let's have fun, right?
Supposed to be doing, yeah.
Right, exactly. So, no, you've definitely brought that up before, but I think it's something that we can bring up over and over again, because the NLSC has turned into, if we're going to be completely honest, outside of what you and I are doing for the site, outside of that other content, the NLSC is basically, as far as who visits it and what gets posted, is like 98 to 99% modding.
Modding, yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah. So that's what it's turned into.
But, I mean, to that point, we are doing this podcast. We're trying to analyze basketball games. We're trying to talk about them in ways that maybe other people aren't talking about them, celebrate them, critique them, etc. And I wanted to bring something up because you and I have been playing a lot of games from that 2009 to 2011, I guess, era. That's been my... You know, I don't even know I can call it a retro kick at the moment, Derek, because those have been the games I've been playing exclusively. It's been at least a couple of weeks since I played NBA 2K21 on any platform, PC, PS4, or PS5. So I've been playing on Fire Edition, a bit of Jam 10, and also, of course, NBA Live 10 a lot. That's quite obvious from my articles and my tweets and everything else as of late. But I did notice something in NBA Live 10 that maybe want to bring this up, this topic about basketball gaming strategies in general. And it also ties a little bit into what we were doing with on Fire Edition and trying to become more strategic. I was just shooting around in the hangar, and how awesome is the hangar, of course, and I accidentally triggered the floater, which in Live 10 you do by moving towards the basket, letting the stick go neutral, and hitting shoot while you've still got forward momentum. And it's pretty intuitive. But I thought about it, and I thought, I often forget to do this in games. And the more I thought about it, I thought, there are a lot of basic and advanced moves that I neglect to do in games a lot of the time. Like, I find moves that work for me, and then I forget about, oh yeah, and I could also be doing this or that, and I forget about this advanced control or something like the floater in Live 10. Is that something you find yourself doing, forgetting about those moves, and then discovering them again during a shootout? And then, is there any time when you're playing games where you think, oh, I should have pump faked there, or I should have done that move or that advanced move? Because sometimes you just get that tunnel vision of, oh, I'm going to the hoop to score, and I forget, oh, I'm going to do this elusive move. I'll freely admit that sometimes I forget to do that, and I get a bit basic, and it's not until I remember those advanced moves that, okay, now I can start dominating again.
Well, so this is kind of a loaded question, because I don't forget about the advanced moves, and I'm always conscious of like the stuff that I can do. Like I'm familiar. Let's put it that way. There's a big difference between not knowing the buttons, which I'm going to get into that in a second, on how to do something. Like, oh, I don't know how to throw a lob, or I don't know how to throw a floater, or do a floater, or and then just not doing it as often as you should, even though you know how to do it. So, like, I think one of the easiest things to forget, and I'm glad you brought up the floater, is to execute a floater, because what do you think of when you're driving to the hoop most of the time? You're going to dunk it, right?
Dunk
like
or layup, yeah, exactly, yeah.
You want to dunk or a layup. You want to attack the rim, maybe get fouled and whatnot. And we also often think about that sucking in thing that happens in almost every basketball game, where you try to pull up for a mid-range, and instead of pulling up, it drags you into the hoop anyway, right? But a good in-between for that, if you're worried about being dragged to the hoop, is doing that floater, which is very easy to initiate in NBA 2K, and like you had stated, in NBA Live 10. And it's very easy to forget about that, and sometimes I do. I'll be completely honest. But let's bring up the fact of, you talked about being strategic and about using all the different buttons. And I'm not calling him out, because we've talked about this before, and it's not his fault either, but I've been playing a lot of games with Stildo 33. Okay. He's very good at the game. And he gave me a really big fight when he was using the 92-93 Suns in a game. I can't remember who I was using, but we had a battle. He was hitting shots all over the floor. He's posting up Barkley, drop stepping, all of this stuff. But Stildo 33 who's Ken, he is used to playing the computer. He's not used to playing humans on that game. In fact, I don't know if he was playing humans before he started playing against me. And when you play the computer, your strategy can be night and day different than when you when you end up playing against a human. And you oftentimes, when you're playing the computer on these games, you don't have to be as strategic.
That's right.
as
Yeah.
playing a human. A human's going to do so many different things and obviously think, which the AI isn't going to think as well. And, they're going to give you a much harder time. So, Stilwell was talking to me and he said, when I play against the computer, I don't have to do the stuff I see you doing against me. And he's asked me a couple questions like, well, how do you do this and whatnot? And, I didn't even think of doing that until I saw you do it. And, boy, I really got to, how do you get by your guy one-on-one effectively, stuff like that. And I think that's really interesting. The way somebody has to play against the computer and then the way they have to play against a human and how a lot of people can play the computer and just get by knowing incredibly just the basics, right?
Oh, for sure.
But then you're going to get housed. Do people say that? You're going to get housed by a human who actually knows what they're doing and utilizes those other controllers, right?
Yeah.
So I found that so thanks actually for bringing that up. That was not planned, listeners. We don't plan really much for this podcast. It's pretty spontaneous.
We get on chat. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But it's been really enjoyable playing against him, and he's getting better the more we play. And it's fun to see that growth as well.
I've definitely seen that with people playing online as well, because on the Pro-Am and other online team play modes, I've seen that come into play, because you see people that are obviously used to grinding their badges in my career, which you can just go against the CPU, you can cheese them all day, and then they're playing online and they're just going into the lane and forcing it up. And now you've got people that are going to be aware of that. Not everybody plays defense online, but the people who do play it well. And you've also got maxed out players with maxed out badges and especially built for online play. Whereas if you're playing with the NBA players, of course there are some inaccuracies as we've discussed when it comes to rosters before, but you generally have more balance in the abilities and the badges that players have. Except in my team we have the OP cards, of course. But as far as online team play in my career, Pro-Am Playground, etc., they've loaded up their player with the best builds possible. If they're dedicated online players, so you can't just go against the CPU because you're going against NBA players on the NBA side of my career. So you're going against these players that you can kind of cheese and be overpowering with, and now you're going up against other players, other avatars that are just as powerful as yours or more so, or even built for destruction online, so to speak. So you can't use those same strategies. You can't just power to the lane. Can't just do it against the CPU. Mindlessly either, but it's even worse against, as you say, a human mind that can react, and it's something that I've had to adjust a little bit with playing with you, and it's always been great competition, as I've said, but probably because I have been playing online, I have been playing multiplayer some kind, and also with some lag as well, so I'm kind of used to compensating sometimes, except when it gets really bad. Still no lag spikes is worse than 2K servers, I will say that, with Parsec. Yeah, it's interesting, like you said, there is the difference between not knowing the moves and forgetting them, and sometimes I remember, that's how you do it, but I just forget that I haven't done that move for ages. But even something as simple as throwing the up fake, that pump fake in the lane, and not just going straight in and trying to shoot and getting sent back with a block, just being able to be a bit more elusive and patient. But it does come down to, like you say, we just want to drive in the lane and get that big dunk because that's exciting. But you can't always do that. You have to pick your spots. And I sometimes run into that myself when I'm trying to get a cool screenshot for an article. I'm trying to force the issue and think, no, I've got to try and play the game a little bit and pick my moments and then get the great screenshot.
I think that I was hoping that you would actually either post or send me those highlights that you had for those NBA Live 10 games, because it sounds like you were having a good time.
Oh, I need to cut them out because I've got them they're recorded as a full game, so I need to cut them out.
Yeah, the ability to take highlights is just awesome. That's why that's why I love action.
Oh yeah,
so much. And it works so well. And, for our On Fire Edition games, I've been using the Elgato and recording with that and cutting up the highlights after, which doesn't take too long. The beauty of playing On Fire Edition is the games are only 2-minute quarters. So it's not too hard to get through. But yeah, no, it's been really great. And no, I am glad you brought that up, because I think that I'm going to give you an example of of an advanced control that I didn't learn until later on a game. NBA 2K14 for the PC. I didn't realize that holding the back bumper and flicking the joystick was how you did a fancy pass until I had the game for like a year.
That's
I
right.
didn't even realize. Yeah, because it's not the same as the newer games as far as just double tapping a button. And so once I figured that out, I'm like, all right, I got to put Jason Williams on the floor. I got to put Magic Johnson on the floor, and whatnot. I got to put Steve Nash on the floor, and but yeah, that's an advanced control that I wish I had learned a little bit earlier on, because it would have made playing through our seasons a little bit more fun.
I mean, going back and forth between games as we often do is also killer as well. Trying to do advanced moves and remember which is the control of the advanced moves in which game. That can get confusing as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think the thing is when you grow up the way that you and I did playing video games, how many advanced moves did Bulls versus Blazers have? How many advanced moves did Live 95 or 96 have? How many advanced moves did Live 98 have, etc.? So you go back, you think about the way we came up, and now you think about all the different things that you can do with these games, and that is one advancement that I just think is absolutely wild and fun. Even something as simple like I talked about on the past podcast, NBA 2K17, where you can choose which side of the hoop you can finish on using the joystick. You can decide if you want to go and do a reverse layup or dunk by pushing the joystick towards the baseline and whatnot. Like stuff like that, we would have loved that.
I mean, up. NBA Live 95, 96, and 97 PC, I would have liked the steal button, but we didn't have one. It was because they were, I forget, I think they might have been ported from the Genesis version. They didn't have that dedicated steal button, so it was automatically reaching in when you got close to a ball handler. That was one of those things you just put up with back in the day. And finally, NBA Live 98 PC gave us a proper steal button, proper expanded controls like the PlayStation version. So that was most welcome. And again, to come from that to these advanced controls that we have now. The other great thing about expanding on controls, it's been great when they can expand on them without completely reinventing them every year. Because there was a few years there where it seemed like they were changing things around every single year in Live and 2K, when they can actually have a fairly consistent configuration, layout with controls, but they're just expanding here or there. Maybe they're moving around a feature that wasn't necessary, like taking away that third shoot button they tried in 07 that just didn't work out. When they just build on the controls and they do it in an intuitive way, and you're not having to relearn everything, and the learning curve each year isn't, when they've completely changed the basic controls around. When they get that consistency, they've done, over the past decade or so, I feel they've done a much better job, kind of that 2K15 to 16, I suppose, maybe the last 5 or 6 years more accurately, of keeping things fairly consistent. And people will say, you just got to get good and learn the new system. And obviously a lot of people have been saying that about 2K21's shot mechanics. But sometimes new ideas don't work out, so they need to pull back and go in a different direction. But it also, if they try to change too much, that's when you get the games that just feel contrived and convoluted. Some years the new features don't work out as well as you'd like, as well as we want them to, and that's why we've said before, it's not always a case of newer is better, because sometimes they make a bad decision, like 07's controls. Not the only problem with Live 07, by the way, but a big one.
Yeah, but it's why it's easy to go from NBA Live 2004, Live 2005, and Live 2006.
True.
Like I can jump in those games back to back to back to back, and it's just really easy to jump into. One thing I will say that they've gotten worse with over the last few years as compared to NBA 2K17 is the right stick control, finishing and dribbling is just not as good. It's not as balanced. You don't have the same control. There's more random results at the hoop. Trying to go baseline and finish is more complicated. Play calling, like quick plays, isn't as good as it used to be. It's not as intuitive. It's not as easy to use, all of that stuff. You find yourself when you run a play, oftentimes you'll be standing there for like 5 seconds trying to run it, as opposed to being able to call a quick one by position, etc. So there's definitely some ways they've gone backwards, I believe, in controls over the last few years with NBA 2K.
No, that's fair. But I do like that they've kept things fairly consistent in configuration. But again, when you go back,
the double tap for the alley oop, it's the same button. Yeah. The double tap for the fancy pass is the same. Being able to post up is using the same button. All of that stuff. Yeah, that's important. I agree.
That side of things, and again, that is where it gets confusing when you go back and forth between games of Live or 2K and a couple of different generations of it. But it's I think we adjust fairly quickly, and it has been great that, as you know, to get back to something we talked about at the top of the show, that we've been able to develop those strategies, and you've been playing more of on Fire Edition. You're seeing how the CPU works. You're getting more and more steals. I'm trying out new things like when I'm playing off-ball, shoving. It even says on the tip screen, why set a pick when you can shove? So trying things like that in a co-op situation. And again, because I've played that game a lot solo, playing through Road Trip on 360. So playing through Road Trip with you co-op, now we can try different strategies that I can clear out the defenders for you if you've got the ball, and vice versa.
Yeah, it's been great. Another adjustment that I made recently, too, is, how to more effectively get my shot off, when to shoot it quicker, understanding how it can still be effective that way. I've gotten better at timing rebounds. I've gotten better watching you off the ball and seeing, you trying to push people and seeing that opening come up. All of that stuff, and we've been winning a lot. I feel like we've definitely been winning a lot more recently. But, yeah, it's been really enjoyable. Again, I'm just going to say to everybody, please, if you haven't already, download Parsec and try to get some games in with people. It's really enjoyable.
And On Fire Edition is still available on Xbox and PlayStation 3, so it is definitely worth picking up as well. The other big thing, of course, is when you pump fake On Fire Edition, you get a big boost to shooting as well.
Yeah, but the thing is on Gold, if you pump fake, a lot of the time they don't fall for it.
Yeah.
They shove you. So what I've gotten the habit of, and I think it's worked really well for both of us, and usually I'm using Larry Bird for those challenges, is I go up the court, and if I'm on somebody my height or shorter, most of the time, most of it, if it's a shorter guy, I'm just shooting over him, right? A lot of the time I'm just going to shoot over him and take that mismatch. But if I see you on a guy that is smaller than you, or there's a switch where the taller guy is on me, I pass it to you. And so you can shoot over the smaller guy. So it's strategy like that I think is cool.
And not forcing the issue, which is the same thing with everything. But so I think sometimes in Jam, especially in the challenges where the three-pointers always are more, except for the challenges where they're the inside, the inside-out challenges where they, or what they call them, dunks only or something, where the three-pointers are only worth 1, so it's not worth taking them. That'd be something for the modern NBA to adopt. But normally that, especially when they're worth 4, there's a big incentive, big temptation to take that now 4-point shot. Whereas you can just go inside for a quick 2, either a finger roll layup or just a short mid-range jumper. And that's something that I've thought about a lot over the years, and I've actually written an article which will be coming out fairly soon, probably, about what your shot chart says about you. What a tremendous clickbait title that is. But I've been looking at my shot chart a bit more often and seeing where I shoot from. And there's all kinds of interesting things, like I'll notice that I shoot a bit more often from the side of the floor, because of course I'm playing on broadcast, the side of the floor that's closest to the camera. I'll often take more shots on that side. And yeah, sometimes I do neglect the mid-range. And that's again goes back to the old days of basketball gaming where jump shots weren't as viable. So if you're going to take a jump shot, it's probably going to be a three-pointer for that extra point, or you're trying to get into the hoop for a layup or a dunk. So I think a lot of us, and funnily enough, that predicted the modern game. Basketball games of the mid-90s predicted the modern NBA. But that strategy is very hard to break, because you're used to saying, well, why am I going to take this mid-range jump shot and get screwed over on the dice roll when I can go in for a dunk or a layup or an inside shot that's probably going to go in, because that's the way it works in games, very high percentage shot, or I'm going to take it outside, step back a little bit further and actually try for that. If I'm going to take the risk, I'm going to go for that three-pointer. So I think that kind of has, that homogenized style kind of goes back to the early days of basketball games.
It feels really strange taking mid-range shots in games like NBA Live 96.
Yeah.
Live 97. Some of those early 2000s games, it feels very weird. It does feel like more it's like a dunk or a three, which is kind of what the NBA is now. It's either a layup or a three. On NBA Jam on Fire Edition, though, I had one game where we were playing together, and it was one of the gold challenges, and I had 71 points with Larry Bird. And I don't know if you remember that, but the threes were worth 4 points, and I had a massive height advantage on my guy, and I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm using Larry Bird.
Making it rain,
and
yeah.
What's funny, by the way, what's funny about Larry Bird, and people don't even realize this, is he didn't even take like 2 threes per game for his career, but he was great at threes. Like his percentages were good. But I mean, Troy Murphy shot 4.9 threes per game in 08-09 and shot 45%. And Larry Bird for his career averaged like under 2 3-point attempts per game. But they always make him just this ridiculous, like, three-point shooter. Not saying he's not a great shooter. I'm just saying he didn't take a lot. But anyway, so I'm out there and I'm firing threes with Larry Bird, and I scored like 71 points. We won the gold challenge and whatnot. But was that really a bad strategy? Those were worth 4. That worked out. Oh, yeah.
When you have great shooters, it works. Absolutely. But it is very easy to fall in love with that three. I think we were trying to get that on another challenge, and it just wasn't working out because we were getting shoved so often. Whereas maybe if we had changed up a little bit and gone inside and just had that 2-point shot, if you will. So it's very easy to. Steve Nash was kind of screwing you over. I mean, you noted that he had a great shooting form, but it was kind of missing a lot.
He was like 1 for 10 threes with me. Good shots too. I was getting by my guy with a spin move and shooting wide open threes with Steve Nash and just bricking him. It was weird.
Definitely been loving playing on Fire Edition. Want to play some more with you. Want to play some Live 10 games. We still have a couple of retro games to set up with the fantasy teams.
Yeah, I definitely want to get back into NBA Live 10 this week and try to get a couple games in that we can talk about on the show because I'm not sick of Live 10 yet.
No, me neither.
I mean, I'm still enjoying it and whatnot. But it is nice to break it up with some arcade games, and that's what my brothers and I have been doing too. We've been breaking it up. We've been playing 2K19, 2K17, 2K16, and NBA Street Volume 2. And then I've had NBA Jam on Fire Edition with you and NBA Live 10 with you. So it's been a lot of different games, sim and arcade.
So, Derek, you and I are, well, we're children of the 90s, but we're born in the 80s. So we're kind of both, would you say?
I can agree with that. I've said this before. I remember playing video games in the 80s. I was young. Yeah. I remember playing Double Dribble in the 80s. So,
but of course, one of the great movies of the 80s and our childhood was the Never-Ending Story. Classic movie, obviously. Speaking of the Never-Ending Story, there's been another update on NBA Live this week.
Yeah. Gotta love the slight digs that you give to NBA Live.
Master of the segue, I am. Yeah.
Yeah, I really, really are. I do want to say really quick about the Never-Ending Story. I did like that movie as a child, but I was so little when I saw it for the first time that I got nightmares over that main character.
Oh yeah.
This out there. That was remember the large turtle?
Oh yes.
That was
yes.
For a little kid. That was a lot.
What they hit us with in the 80s. The first. Land Before Time. Let's hit us with that. My Girl. Let's just hit these kids with these with these heart-wrenching movies. Why not? Yes.
What's wild though is I grew up in a household that wasn't censored. We were basically allowed to watch anything. So I watched movies like Child's Play and The Exorcist at a very young age.
Wow. Yeah.
I remember The Exorcist absolutely freaked me the hell out. I remember covering my face and doing the whole opening up my fingers and looking at the screen, then closing them and whatnot, because it was it scared the hell out of me. I was so little. But yeah, when you're a little kid and you see stuff like that, sometimes it's like, wow, this is insane.
It is, yeah. So, speaking of zombies, getting back to NBA Live, but yeah, so I wrote the article this week, the NBA Live deserved better. I alluded to it on last week's show and then posted it on this week. And then, of course, we get an update, sort of, on NBA Live. It was an interview with EA Sports General Manager Daryl Holt, mentioning that EA is still discussing and working on HD basketball projects, which refers to PC or console releases as opposed to mobile titles. Confirmed they have the NBA license for mobile titles, and they're talking about what they're going to do for HD game, which we'd think be NBA Live. Of course, they also still have the NBA Jam license as well, and of course NBA Street, if they wanted to resurrect that. Those seem less likely than an NBA Live. But just when we think they're out, they pull us back into this damn discussion about the future of NBA Live. And but again, we just keep getting these snippets that, referring back to my article, you feel like, again, it deserves better. We want to know, okay, is it coming back? Is it not? Say either way. These vague suggestions and the occasional, you see somebody has done some mocap at one of the studios, or they've hired this person or that person, or they've got a job listing for this studio that suggests that they're still working on it. And it sounds like they still are. So a lot of people were saying after EA Play, it was all doom and gloom. That's it for NBA Live. Rest in peace. Whatever. It still seems like they are working on something or planning to. But again, it's still very vague.
Why did we have to find out this way?
Yeah.
Why didn't we find out earlier? They promised to keep us in the loop. We talked about the social media posts on Twitter and whatnot, saying that we want to bring you guys something great for next gen, etc. Why did we have to find out this way? And why is it so vague again? Why can't we get a little bit more information and whatnot? Yeah, so it's still frustrating, and you still don't have an idea of what they're doing. Is it the NBA Live series that's coming back? I think so. How many times have I said that I thought they were going to come back for next gen? I knew that I didn't feel the series was dead.
They alluded to it. Yeah, I mean, you thought that because they alluded to it strongly.
Yeah, that's what they said, right? Strongly, right, exactly. We don't know what they're going to come out with. Maybe they come back in a big way and we're just incredibly surprised and they come out with a sim game. It's NBA Live 2023. And they also come up with a arcade basketball game and we're like, oh my God, look, they're bringing NBA Jam back, or, oh, look, it's Street. All of this stuff. And maybe we have a show, maybe our 200th episode, and it's you and I saying, "Oh my God, they came back and it's great." And NBA Live looks like they're on the right track and they're back on the map. And now we have an arcade game. Maybe that's not out of the realm of possibility. You know what I mean? And we just have to have our fingers crossed at this point because we just need more basketball games.
Absolutely. We've talked about it before when we stand by the need for competition and alternatives and choice and everything else. It's kind of frustrating that we just get these snippets, and just when we're trying to... I thought last week, okay, we're going to put this whole topic to bed, at least for a while. We're going to put it on ice because we've talked about the latest disappointment, nothing at EA Play, everyone's feeling doom and gloom. I'm writing my article about NBA Live deserves better. I put it out, and then we get a snippet. But like you say, they kind of have to push to get that information. You have to have somebody asking somebody high up in the company, hey, what about NBA Live? And that's when you get a vague reference to, and some of Andrew Wilson's interviews have done the same thing, but you've really got to push and prod them to actually address the future of NBA Live. And certainly, I mean, no, if nothing's ready to announce, they're not going to say it, and they're not going to do anything prematurely. But at the same time, they've given us nothing after that announcement. The series deserve better, we deserve better. Said it last week, said it in the article, say it again now. Absolutely the case. But it's not until you push and prod them to, hey, can we get some kind of update, please, that they actually give us some kind of update.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times it's also just ignoring people.
True.
Who's asking for updates. I mean, if you really think about it, how many influencers, blue checks, all of that stuff, you and I, but we don't have blue checks. We can't be that important. But anyway, we, you and I and whatnot.
Do we even know that we're Andrew and Derek? I'm not verified. We could be anybody.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, how many times have we asked? And, how many times have they tagged the EA Sports NBA Live handle on Twitter and then on other platforms and whatnot? And it's just been silence and no comments or anything like that. So it's not even like poking and prodding, right? Because they're not even responding to that.
Yeah, not until it's an interview with somebody interviewing a higher up. You're not really getting anything, no.
Right, so it makes you hopeful that they actually said something. And the fact that they said they are working on something, which we believe that they probably were anyway. So, yeah, I don't know. Are we in a different position, really?
No. We know they're not giving up on it yet, and that's pretty much all we can glean from that. Or at least they're not publicly giving up on it. It was interesting to see how different people reported on that news, but it's one of those things that gives you that glimmer of hope because it's not slamming the door shut, but at the same time, it's not really showing you anything behind the door either. So you can't read too much into it or get too excited until they actually say, until there's some kind of teaser that with the words NBA Live and a bit of a glimpse of something. Okay, you're coming back with something. Now you're just thinking about maybe, possibly, at some point, maybe coming back with something, perhaps. Put it that way.
Well, like what you said on the last episode of this podcast is, if you're going to kill it, kill it.
Yeah.
Stop leading people on, right?
Very much.
They don't want to kill it. And it's just another vague, comment from a higher up and whatnot. So yeah, I guess at this point it's just getting really old, us having to keep doing this and talking about it and whatnot. Yeah, it's kind of frustrating.
If I can transition slightly into something that also includes 2K, because the point forward, Domi brought it up in the forum. The idea of Live, or even eventually 2K becoming free-to-play and just paying to unlock offline modes. Pro Evolution Soccer is going to that model in the future. They're looking at, I believe FIFA is also looking to counter it with a similar option. What do you think of that for Live and or 2K going free-to-play in the future?
I hate it.
Yeah, same.
I hate it because what it ends up doing is it ends up allowing these companies to put even more items behind a paywall. It gives more justification to it, right? It makes people actually end up having to spend far more if they want the complete game. So, yeah, I absolutely hate it. I'm not surprised that if EA Sports pitched that to the NBA, that the NBA swiftly turned it down. Like, that's what we heard, right?
Yeah.
That the NBA turned down a possible free-to-play model for NBA Live. And I don't blame them. I think it's a absolute. The only reason why these companies would do this is to take advantage of consumers, because it sounds great in theory. Hey, free-to-play, guys, but in reality, what it does is, like I stated, it just allows them to hide more behind a paywall and push the idea of people having to unlock all of this extra content, which should be included in a base price for a game. It allows them to jack up prices and take money from people. So no, I'm not. I think it's a terrible idea.
No doubt, I'm with you on that one. And even if we want to put aside the issue of microtransactions, which we shouldn't, but let's put it aside for a moment. The idea that they release NBA 2K, let's say next year, if 2K were to do it, or NBA Live, if they release that, and then they're going to update that with content through the years as a free-to-play game, there's a couple of problems that I have conceptually with it. One, you're going to lose seasons. Whereas, and you and I being retro gamers, we love to, pop in NBA Live 10, and we've got the 09-10 rosters there, where it's an interactive almanac, as I've said in so many articles on the podcast before. That's what I love about retro basketball gaming. You lose that because the updates are going to come through, and that NBA Live that was once released, let's say, for the 21-22 season, 22-23 season, now that season is gone. Are they going to be able to do proper upgrades to the franchise mode and career mode and everything if they're just adding to that free-to-play game? Probably not, or not even the gameplay. There's only so much they can do with patches and updates before it has to be that brand new game that's with rewritten code every year. And as much as we call them copy and paste games, they do actually rewrite a lot of code every year to make everything work and to make some little adjustments here and there. Probably not going to happen if it's free to play. And now we bring in that problem of microtransactions, recurrent revenue mechanics. And I think I've said in articles before, and I'll always say it, that if it's great for profits and recurrent revenue, it is not good for the gameplay experience, because those things do not mesh. They just don't go together. Because to maximize recurrent revenue, developers have to do things that are anti-consumer and that go against fun, making it grindy and making it so frustrating that you want to pay to actually get the progress. So that's not an enjoyable game. It is weak game design, in fact.
Yeah, you know what some of the worst games on Steam are, and some of the worst games on the PlayStation Store and whatnot? Free-to-play games.
Oh yeah, the asset flips.
Do you know why they're the worst? Yeah, do you know why they're the worst? Yeah, not only because of the asset flips, that's another thing. Do you know why they're the worst? Because if you want a complete product, the game forces you to spend a ton of money. It is pay to win. That's what I hate about it. It's pay to win and pay to play, as opposed to what they try to advertise it as, which sounds so great, free to play. You have these games that have, let's say you go with a role-playing game, a free-to-play role-playing game. It's like, okay, well, you can't go into this area or that area, or you can't even beat the game unless you put this amount of money in. You want to be able to be a completionist on this game? Well, you're going to have to pay all of this money to unlock all of this different stuff. You want this armor that's pretty good in the game? Well, you can't get it unless you pay.
Exactly.
For that armor or for that weapon and everything. And you know that $60 price tag that you may have spent on the game? If it just had a regular price tag and, with all the content and whatnot, what do you end up spending by the time you're done with that game?
Way more.
You end up spending hundreds of dollars. And that's why the free-to-play thing is all BS and all, BS marketing in general. I absolutely hate it.
Free to play, pay to enjoy. Even if it's not pay to win, because even if you want to say, 2K or Live would still need stick skills to actually win, if they're going for that model, it's still going to be pay to enjoy. And I've said this in an article before when I discussed whether or not 2K was pay to win or not. In the strictest sense, no, because you do still have to... Look, even if you pay thousands of dollars to get great card packs or upgrade a bunch of my players in NBA 2K, You do still need to be good on the sticks to compete with other players. Sure, CPU, not as much. However, you're still having to pay to enjoy. And are you really enjoying it? And then that content's gone the next year. And then, especially with that season's approach and everything else and new releases, I would absolutely hate 2K or Live coming back to go free to play. It just would not work for this genre.
It makes me lose respect for EA and makes me question them even more.
Absolutely.
To be honest with you,
yeah.
the fact that they even presented that, because you know what's behind it.
Yeah.
You know the reason why they presented that to the NBA and tried to push the NBA Live series in that direction, and honestly, that bothers me.
All I can say is that I hope it never comes to that for Live or 2K. I'd rather Live stay dormant than come back as free to play.
Yeah, there's a big difference between the idea that I had on another show where it was like a subscription model. So, like, for example, my brother has Final Fantasy XI, right? And he pays, I don't know, a certain amount a month. It keeps the servers up and whatnot, and he gets all of the content for the game, right?
Yeah.
There's a little bit, there's a pretty, not a little, I think there's a sizable difference between that and going free to play and just screwing the consumer over.
Definitely.
If you had, say, a yearly subscription and said, okay, listen, we're going to keep this game updated, and you can either pay $5 or $6 a month, or you can pay the whole year up front, and even if it's a few dollars more, let's say $65 for the year, or $80, even up to like $70 for the year, and it's like where you're going to get consistent updates, and we're going to be updating this game every year, and this is a one-time fee. This is a one-time fee, and you get all of the content in the game. That is a lot different than saying, here's free to play, and you're going to have to spend an ungodly amount of money in order to pay to enjoy or pay to win.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just, I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate the idea.
So people float that idea, and yeah, I hate it too. I hope it never goes that way, because I think people, once again, as we are very fond of saying on this podcast, not looking at the big picture when they suggest ideas like that.
Yeah. You know how I feel about the big picture.
That's right.
It's not looked at enough, Andrew. The big picture is not looked at enough.
And we're not talking about big TVs, although they are nice to have as well.
They are.
So as we begin to wrap up here, Derek, before we started recording, you said you had a fun question for me. So yeah, hit me with it.
I have two questions.
Yep.
And I think you'll like these. So give me the most dominant move that you ever remember seeing in a video game. And this can be any basketball video game, meaning a move that is so unstoppable that somebody can spam it over and over and over again, and don't you can't use double dribble corner free. That's
okay.
The only thing you can't. Yeah, because I know you were probably just like double dribble corner free, but no. So what is the most dominant thing you've seen in a basketball video game that you're like, this is the cheesiest thing ever, and it can be done constantly?
So there's actually two that come to mind. The first is NBA Live 06 Freestyle Superstars, the outside scorer layups. Because yes, the outside scorers were more of a scoring swingmen and wing player moves, not just outside scoring, but also the inside driving moves that they had as well. The layups that they had, the wraparound behind the back and the up and under, it was also a great litmus test to see whether the CPU was playing fair with its comeback logic, if it actually did start missing, because that's how reliable it was. I scored 91 points with Ben Gordon in NBA Live 06 in my Bulls dynasty, spamming the hell out of that move to try and get to 100 points. I was 1 of 10 for threes with him in that game. Couldn't make a three, but with that outside scorer Freestyle Superstars moves, just spamming that near the hoop. The other one that comes to mind is a glitch in 2K13 with the Acrobat badge, where you could do an adjusted three-pointer on the perimeter and pretty much make it every single time doing the double tap adjustment on a three-point shot and basically hit that every time, to the point where in the official roster updates they took Acrobat badges off players. Those would be the two that come to mind for me.
No, that is wild. The NBA Live 06 thing. See, you spent a little bit more time with NBA Live 06 Freestyle Superstars, so that's something that I had a feeling you might bring up Freestyle Superstars, but I didn't know it would be that specifically.
I'll give it a try. Give that one a try next time you play 06. It is wild.
I would say that for me, the most dominant thing that I have ever come across in a video game, just something that you can do over and over and over again, is the inbounds steals and steals in general on an NBA in the Zone 2. they throw the passes so slow on that game when they inbound the ball that you can literally time it every time and just steal it and go in for a dunk, steal it and go in for a dunk. And my brother and I still talk about it to this day. I played a full season on just like 1 or 2 minute quarters, and I averaged like over 200 points a game. Why? And I don't even, that's something stupid. Like, you can't even believe I played a full season doing that, because it was just fun, mindless stuff. But the reason I scored so much in such low minute quarters is the pass was so slow that I kept stealing the inbound steal, getting an inbound steal every time and going in for a dunk. Steal, dunk, steal, dunk. And I was winning games like 220 to like 6. Or 200,
wow.
220.
Yeah, that is insane. That is very OP.
That was the most dominant thing I have ever experienced in a video game. So that would be my go-to for that question. I have one more for you. Who is the most dominant player you have ever used in a basketball video game? And it can be any game.
Dominant player. I thought you were going to say the most dominant player that I've faced, which I'll throw out there as well, which is Shaquille O'Neal, unsurprisingly, in NBA Live 2002, because the physics aren't there. The charge button, what didn't come into Live 2003, he is unstoppable in that game. On 12-minute quarters, he would drop 50 to 70 points on me very easily, with me trying to do everything I could. Shaq just going in and dunking. You know how the dunks work in Live 2002. You can't stop them outside of the occasional block. So Shaq was just unstoppable. To that end, he might be one of the most unstoppable players that I've used as well in Live 2002, I think. I might have to go with Shaq. Because in any game where you could just, back in the day, just get dunks ridiculously easy because there was no real physicality in the paint, any dunker really, but Shaq in particular, with his strength ratings as well, would just power through any kind of tin can physics and just dunk. So it might be Shaq.
Yeah, that's not surprising, is it?
No.
I mean,
it is appropriate. It's appropriate. Not necessarily to a realistic degree. Shaq did score the 60 points and did have some 40 and 50-point games, I believe, but at the same time, not as unstoppable as he was in video games. But Shaq might be for me.
For me, the toughest player that I've ever had to stop in a video game, to be honest with you, is NBA Live 08 for PS2, Jermaine O'Neal. I can't tell you how frustrated my brother and I were. They throw it up to Jermaine O'Neal. He scored like 100 points on us. We were using Legends too. We were doing a Legend season, and so he's being guarded by like Kareem and Shaq and whatnot, and we're contesting every one of these shots, and they're throwing it from full court, from the back court all the way to the top, the high post to Jermaine O'Neal, and he is just constantly hitting shots on us over and over and over again, and he's dunking on us, and it's just like, we have legends here. We have some of the best shot blockers in NBA history, and Jermaine O'Neal is making us look like crap. And he's just scoring over and over and over again, and they wouldn't stop going to him. We were like, okay, we're both locked on a player. We're going to go stand by Jermaine O'Neal. We're going to make sure that they can't pass him the ball. And they still get the ball to him, and he still shoots on us, and he scores.
That's insane.
And it was just so frustrating. I actually recorded either the game or the highlights of the game. I got to see if I can find them. And like I said, he scored the computer on our Legends team scored like 100 points with Jermaine O'Neal. And that is the most dominant thing that I've ever seen, I think, almost in a video game by the computer, by a single player.
Actually, that does remind me, Live 09 PS2, which was pretty much the same game as Live 08 PS2 and PC for that matter, Jason Richardson scored over 100 on me, playing 12-minute quarters. I do remember that now. Just going in, abusing the dunked on animations, the two-man dunked on animations of that game, and then just hitting some threes. Just could not stop him. Almost got to the point where I was like, I kind of want him to score 100 points on me, just to see if the CPU can. Saying that, I was still trying to defend him on the perimeter and inside, and he still got it. Yeah, that's again, same generation, yeah.
Yeah, Jason Richardson's one of those players that was always just spectacular in video games. Way more spectacular in video games on the floor with the computer using him or you using him than he was in real life. The same with Alonzo G. Alonzo G in real life, he could give you about 10 points a game or whatnot, but you put him in NBA 2K13 and Alonzo G is Julius Erving on steroids. on that game. He's just so overpowering, and he's dunking on you. And you can't block dunks, really, in 2K13. It's very rare, so he's just dunking all over you and whatnot. So it's interesting. We could do a whole show on players that are so much better in video games than they are in real life.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the things like our virtual hardwood legends, like a Joe Alexander, like a Travis Outlaw, and Troy Murphy and everything. But it's kind of exaggerated abilities. But those players that are pretty good, borderline all-stars or even all-stars, but they're just ridiculously good because of the way the game's physics and mechanics work. And certainly with games where you couldn't block dunks, any kind of slasher was particularly overpowered. And we saw that a lot, again, with the Freestyle Superstars in 06. Great idea, but it was an overpowering concept, unfortunately. Josh Smith, Jason Richardson, definitely those players that you kind of...
Josh Smith.
Yeah.
Josh Smith. God, what a dominant performer in video games.
Very difficult to rate as well. Always ended up a little bit higher, and that's the one thing I've, as a roster mate of so many years, trying to get his overall rating to look good, while at the same time getting the individual stats right. Like a Steve Nash was really hard. Gerald Wallace, Josh Smith, just trying to balance the athletic ratings and everything else, and to get the right performance was very, and then an overall that looked realistic, because everybody focuses on the overall, of course, was just so difficult. But as far as players in a two-player game, in multiplayer, I will say that what you did to me with Dan Marley in Live 95 was that was pretty dominant as well. When you're pulling up from 50 feet and splashing threes, that was pretty good.
That was wild. I got to get that video up on YouTube, or at least send it to you. Yeah, I know. If you think about it, that's why I love the human versus human gameplay. Like, we were able to experience that together, that Dan Marley thing. Yeah, I was pulling up from half court and a foot inside half court. Had 50 some odd points in in low minute quarters. Yeah, that was, you talk about outstanding performances, and everything gets thrown out the window oftentimes when you're playing a human, as far as like who you should be using, realism, all of that stuff. I've talked about video game legends. Like, I can't even tell you the amount of like 80 to 100 point games my brother Mark had using Keith Van Horn in the old NBA Lives. I mean, you just use Keith Van Horn and you're just shooting over the defense, and it doesn't matter who's in front of you. You just fire it up court to give it to Keith Van Horn, and he's just going to jack threes in your face. Pat Garrity was ridiculously dominant. My brother had over 100. I think he had 112 points with Walter Herman. I think it's pronounced Ehrman, but Herman, spelt Herman. I want to say it was NBA 2K... Was it 2K8? I can't remember.
They were at the time using the game, yeah.
Yeah, 2K8 or 2K7. And I think he had like 112 points with him, and he was just slashing to the hoop and destroying us with big dunks and smoking threes with us. Mark is the king of using subpar players, or what NBA, like average NBA players, and turning them into superstars. He is just awesome at it. But yeah, I love stuff like that, and I'm glad that we had a recent experience like that with Dan Marley when we were playing.
I still want to play another.
Subpar, he's great. Dan Marley was great.
What wasn't 15 threes in 20 minutes great? No one has been so far in the NBA, at least. No, I'm also glad that we've been able to do that stuff with the fantasy teams. I want to do some more crazy stuff as well. I mean, the retro teams are nice that we've been putting together. It's funny that we've got these retro teams in so many other games, yet we want to. It's such a novelty. I think it's the novelty of putting it together in the fantasy teams mode. Like, what can we create that then results in such a great gameplay experience as well? I think that's a big part of it for us.
It really is. There's something about creating something with stock assets. Like I said, with NBA 2K14, I went back and I actually created the 08-09 Lakers in NBA 2K14 for Xbox One. And it's because I had the majority of the roster, and I put them on the floor, and I'm like, oh my God, this is cool. Like, I'm playing the console, but I'm using the 08-09 Lakers, and it really looks like they're out there. So there's definitely a novelty to it. It's enjoyable. And we definitely have a lot more retro matchups that we need to get to on NBA Live 10.
And also the crazy stuff, like the makeshift 90s and 2000s All-Stars that I was looking at who we could do with that. Again, Virtual Hardwood Legends, more games. That was one of our most enjoyable games, I think. I screwed up at the end, and you took advantage with the legendary Hasheem Thabit getting that game-winning dunk there. But again, playing with legends of Joe Alexander and Travis Outlaw and Troy Murphy and Hasheem Thabit, That's just putting something together and having some fun. And look, I love playing a dynasty game or a franchise mode game, association, my league, whatever, with real players, or maybe changing things a bit and making a few trades here and there, and all that stuff is great, and playing my career and everything. But what you can do with an exhibition game and just a little bit of creativity, it really flies under the radar, because it's perhaps one of the most unsung modes, because, it's just a single standalone game, and it gets boring after a while. But you can do all these creative things with it. And we've found a lot of creative things. And Fantasy Teams mode it's a separate mode. It's a separate mode to play now in Live 10, obviously, but it's still an exhibition mode of sorts, a single game experience. But we've been able to do some creative stuff with it, and I encourage anybody going back to these games, mess around, put some weird rosters together, or try and get a retro roster going with the players, with the stock assets, as you said. It doesn't take long to do. Or we did some prep work over a couple of hours, me remotely on your PC on the emulator. Just take some time to set some stuff up, and you can have all kinds of fun scenarios. And it breathes new life into these old games, and it's why our retro gaming has been so amazing.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I'm more of a my league and season /franchise/association guy, but what changes the dynamic is, like you said, those fun matchups. But then what makes it more acceptable to playing exhibition is there's two other factors. One, playing a human, just playing a friend, right? Like it's just awesome playing a friend.
It is. Yeah.
It nothing beats it, in my opinion. And number two, we still have those. We're recording the games. We're recording the highlights, and it's something that we're going to be able to look back on. So it's just, so what? It's not in the playoffs or in like official season, and there's no records being kept or anything like that. But those moments are being captured. Right. And so I think that's another aspect of it. And I've really enjoyed recording the games. And I think I've gotten you into it a little bit even more. The more that, we've been doing it, and we've been, I've been sending you those videos for the YouTube channel and whatnot. And you've always recorded. I've gone back and looked at the history of the NLSC channel on YouTube, and you've always, kind of recorded highlights here and there. But I feel like you're doing it a little bit more now, and I feel like it's great. Like capturing these moments, the fact that we can do that with today's technology and we can do it in such high quality, it's great.
Undoubtedly. I'm definitely into it. And looking forward to more games, looking forward to more fantasy matchups and retro matchups and everything else we can do. And, of course, playing through Road Trip. It's, I'm keen to keep that going.
Yeah, we're going to definitely keep that going. We'll beat the whole thing, and we'll talk about it on here. Also, just a heads up, I got the Live King. I was talking to him today, Steve, and he's downloading Parsec, and I'm going to try to connect with him tomorrow and see how it works and see if he wants to play a couple games. So yeah, I think that's going to be fun because he's really big into the live series.
Of course,
and now they got the Xbox One companion app working with Parsec and whatnot. If him and I wanted to jump on and play a game of Live 15, 16, 17, or 17 that didn't exist, Live 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, and whatnot, we could do that.
So stay tuned for more NLSC Community Showdowns. But yes, that has brought us to the end of episode number 386 of the NLSC Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed this week's conversation, and we turn the conversation over to you. Let us know some of the moves that you always forget, or the strategies that you've tried and remembered over the years, and some of the most dominant players that you've faced or used. Anything we talked about this week, we want to hear your take on that as well. Of course, the NLSC Podcast comes out every Sunday on the NLSC, which is me-live.com. We're also on all the major podcatching apps and platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, to name just a few. On those platforms, search for NLC Podcast, look for our logo, and that will be us. And if you do feel inclined to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, we definitely would appreciate that as well. But as long as you're tuning in and enjoying the show every week, that is the main thing. And since we are at the end of the show, Derek, promote those socials and hit us up with any final words for our fantastic listeners.
Absolutely. First off, again, thank you for tuning into the NLSC Podcast. Also, thank you for your top 10 submissions. I already got a few this week. I love putting it together every week, so keep those highlights coming. Tune into Holding Court with D for Free. We're on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Audible, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, CLNS Media as well. Definitely tune in to my handle on Twitter at D4384. That's where I'm the most active. I also have a gaming channel on there, which is gaining a little bit of traction, at D43G. You can follow me on YouTube, subscribe to me on YouTube, D for Free. I'm also on the NLSC forums, D for Free as a team member, and I'm on Instagram at D for 384.
as I mentioned on the show, it is our 25th anniversary of the NLSC this year, and also my 20th anniversary as webmaster admin. We will be looking to do some anniversary content for the site, some fun things here and there, and maybe looking to do some fresh things around the site as well, some fresh features, and maybe spruce things up around the forum and main site, so please stay tuned for that. Of course, you can find me in the forum. My name is Andrew, very creatively titled, I know. I'm Andrew NLSC on Twitter, as I said at the top of the show. The NLSC is on Twitter and Facebook at the NLSC. On Instagram, we are NLSC Basketball. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. And of course, give a look to the NLSC itself, nv-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. But yes, that is all for this week, so thank you once again for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.